All right, really good news from John Lynch this morning. He was just on KMBR, and he said that he'd be very surprised if George Kittle did not play on Saturday for the showdown against the Seattle Seahawks. I also thought that John struck a very optimistic tenor regarding Trent Williams. And those of you who've been listening to me, I have almost assumed that Trent won't be ready this weekend with a hamstring injury, but if the 49ers win, I have thought that he'd be ready by January 17th when their next game would be, or at least that would be the earliest possible date for their next game after the bye week. But John Lynch says that Trent Williams is doing everything in his power to be out there this weekend on Saturday night against the Seattle Seahawks. Anyway, Lynch was on KMBR. Let's listen to his exact words on this injury report.
I can tell you that George really was making every attempt to play last week. We had the short week coming off Monday Night Football, being back east, and it just made the turnaround. We didn't feel like it was wise, and really George woke up on, I think probably, I'm trying to get all my days right. We played Sunday night. Saturday, George felt pretty good. He pushed it a little on Saturday to try to see if we could get there. He woke up Sunday and he was sore. At that point, we just said, no, we're not going to do this as much as we need and rely. And then we have that performance by Tonjes. So he really picked him up and George was able to rest. But I think the fact that he pushed it so hard last week in an effort to play, that's what the great ones do. And I always tell players, set your mindset like you're going to play this week, because if you miss it, you'll be that much closer for next week. So I think it sets up well. We were in a walkthrough situation last night. George was out there, so that makes me feel good about where he's at. We obviously got to get through the week, but I'd be very surprised if George wasn't out there. And Juice had a hip thing pop up. Juice is just he's a stalwart. He's out there every week, and so we kind of anticipate that being the case. But we'll see as the week progresses. Trent Williams, we talked about that very first play of the game. Interesting in that Trent, 37 years old, after the game, I asked him how he was. He'd never had a hamstring injury in his entire life, and so he really didn't know what it felt like. I always say this, the great athletes, and Trent Williams kind of goes to the top of that list, as good as I've been around, and they tend to heal a little faster, and the motivation is certainly there. We will have to be smart, and it is a tall task to turn around on the hamstring injury that he had, but he's making every effort. We'll see if he gets there. And who else are we talking about?
McCaffrey with the back.
Christian. Yeah. Oh, Christian. He's kind of important.
He's okay.
Christian, I saw him walking out of here the other night, and he looked like a guy who's had a lot of touches. And but Christian, he takes care of himself so well. I think Christian should be good. I think Christian will be ready. He knows how to get himself ready. What I love about Christian here the last couple of weeks, I've seen a little extra juice, man. I think I think the great ones know how to peak when they need to be peaking most, and I think we're seeing that with Christian right now. I'm seeing a little extra burst, the way he got out of there on that 41-yard run to our sideline. There was a little extra pop in that deal, and so I'm feeling really good about where Christian's at.
He's right. I was watching some tape last night on the 41-yard run, which was the longest run of the season for the 49ers. Spencer Burford was 30 yards downfield, blocking out in front of Christian McCaffrey. Spencer Burford is playing the best football of his career. And I think that it's very, very important to acknowledge when things are going very right for the 49ers offensive line, because that is a group that has taken so much heat, and so much of it has been unwarranted, unnecessary over the years. They've actually, last year, for example, it was a slightly above average offensive line, and people acted like it was one of the worst in football. There was a question this season, though, if Spencer Burford would have to play, would he be a tackle or would he be a guard? Because the last time that we saw him at guard, he didn't play all too well. That was back in 2023. Well, Spencer Burford has elevated his play, and the entire 49ers interior line is playing so much better than in years past. And I think that's been a big part of the key to get this offense moving back up to, well, they're at the number one level in the entire league right now. Ever since Brock Purdy returned in week 11, the 49ers offense has topped the charts. But take a look at this. This is rushing EPA by direction. This has really changed. The 49ers don't have a great run attack this year. It's gotten better. I think it's starting to click right now. So maybe our judgment of the rushing attack is going to be different in a few weeks, because over the past couple of weeks, it really has been more efficient than early in the season. But you want the blue/green lines. You don't want the red lines. You want positive efficiency on runs. The 49ers, their best runs have been up the middle, over center and left guard. And center is where Jake Brendel plays, and Jake Brendel probably is owed a few apologies from 49ers fans. He has been fantastic. I mean, he had several knockdowns in the game on Sunday against the Chicago Bears, and I do have to also call out Spencer Burford for his work downfield, sprinting far downfield to lead the way for Christian McCaffrey on that 41-yard run. Speaking of the left side of the offensive line, that's where Lynch was talking about Trent Williams. He said that the special athletes, and Trent obviously is at the top of that list at 320 pounds with insane athleticism. John Lynch said that those guys tend to heal a little bit more quickly. And it's remarkable to know that Trent Williams is 37 years old, has played an extremely mobile and athletic brand of football for multiple decades, and this was his first hamstring injury. I think because of that, there's more uncertainty than you typically would have regarding the timeline for Trent Williams' return. You know, some guys have had hamstring injuries before, and as soon as it happens, they'll say, okay, well, that was a bad one. This is going to be 4 weeks. I know I'm going to need at least a month for this muscle to heal. For Trent Williams, you know, somebody who's a famously fast healer, a famously exceptional athlete, he suffered the hamstring injury trying to chase down TJ Edwards, the linebacker of the Chicago Bears, on that pick six on the first play of the game. Trent Williams hit 17.5 miles per hour on the GPS chip on that play. So he was moving. Even at this age, he can cook on that field, but it did get his hamstring, and he limped off the field, and he went into the medical tent. He was in there for a long time, and in retrospect, that's because this is the first time that he's had this injury. So they're really trying to figure out, can he come back? Maybe, maybe not. And then he obviously was disappointed when they decided to shut him down. But the point that John Lynch made was, because there's so much uncertainty here, this can also break in the positive direction. And Trent Williams is doing everything in his power to be good to go for the 49ers on Sunday against the Seahawks. They have insurance, though. Austin Pleasance, the backup left tackle who stepped in for the 49ers against the Bears, is big, he's fast, he's strong, and he is resilient. And I think all of that showed as soon as he plugged into the game for the 49ers there in week 17. Pleasance had been on 5 practice squads over the course of the past half decade, just waiting for his shot to deliver. Finally, he got it, and he allowed only 2 pressures over 40 pass blocking snaps. And I'll say that some of the run blocking that Pleasance put on tape was really good as well, because that was arguably the 49ers' best rushing performance of the season, and they're able to manage it despite the fact that they lost Trent Williams on the very first play. Well, John Lynch on KMBR had some intel on Austin Pleasance and his work ethic.
Lord, I think it's just very indicative of what this season's been all about. You just used the word resilient. I think that's probably, if anyone asked me to describe this year's team, that's exactly what it is. And it really has been, you know, oftentimes there's adages that people refer to, there's cliches, next man up. Well, this year we've seen that come to fruition. And, you know, for Austin Pleasance, first play of the game, Trent Williams, we have a interception that ends up getting returned for a touchdown. Trent, I always it's always my favorite thing because that's when you really get to see his athleticism. You never like an interception, but Trent's competitiveness comes out. Nowadays we have these GPS machines. I think Trent on that particular play hit 17.5 miles per hour. There's receivers that don't run that in our league. Unfortunately it grabbed his hamstring. For Austin Pleasance to come and play the way that he did, that had as much to do with our victory as anything. And Tonjes, made 7 catches, a number of them on third down, and just showed that no moment's too big for him. And we've been having contributions like that all season long, and we'll need to continue to have those because you never know what's going to happen. But I think, it probably helps the next guy when you've seen other guys be able to do it. And one thing I'll say about Austin Pleasance, I'm an early morning guy. That's kind of my deal. I'm in here early. I've gotten into the cold plunge like a lot of guys have, and I go down there and cold plunge. Austin Pleasance is the first guy in this building of all the players each and every day. And so I think it's not just some mystery as to why he was able to go out and execute. I think the other thing is, Trent takes vet days every Wednesday. That's something we do for certain players that are a little bit older, and we feel like need that. And so every Wednesday, Austen has been able to take those starter reps, and I think that comes in handy as well. So those two things probably helped us.
So we already knew about the vet days and the fact that Austin Pleasance was able to get into practice every week for the 49ers. I talked to Austen about that. We've had a couple interviews with him play on this channel. His work with Brock Purdy at practice consistently over the course of this year has allowed him to know where Brock Purdy is at on the field. It's not just the vet days for Trent Williams where Pleasance is there taking the reps, but it's also the quality and the consistency of the reps that Brock Purdy provides. Pleasance talked about his 5-step drops, his 7-step drops, all being uniform. His scramble drill decisions also all making sense, and it almost creates a sense of eyes in the back of the head for offensive linemen. You always know where Brock Purdy is going to be, even when the defense doesn't. And that's a really, really hard dynamic to attain. But, Greg Cosell has talked about this a lot. I've talked about it a lot. Purdy's main superpower is his processing ability and his ability to command from the pocket on time. The running ability, he delivers on top of that. It is icing on the cake. It's the cherry on top. It is not the main event. For a lot of athletic quarterbacks, and Purdy's one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the league, but for a lot of athletic guys, the running always seems to come first, or it seems to supersede the play from the pocket. And that's why their games don't have real longevity. In the NFL, ultimately, you're going to have to win on timing from the pocket. Whatever you can do with your legs, that is the cherry on top. And because Purdy plays this game from an actual quarterback standpoint and is so good dissecting from the pocket first, I think that he's got all those timing things down in his head to where they translate directly to what the offensive line is expecting. He's on top of all those fundamentals. The line can more easily block for him. And then the line also will be able to recognize maybe when he does bail, because if certain guys get beat or if there's an overloaded front coming in from the right side, they'll know that Purdy's going to bail to his left. They'll understand that he follows the rules that he should follow instead of just freewheeling and zigzagging around. And when you don't know where the hell your quarterback is, that can be a big, big problem for the offensive line. That is not an issue for the 49ers O-line, even the backups like Austin Pleasance with Brock Purdy. How about this? The 49ers have an epic, legendary quarterback room. I've been showing you staggering data each and every day. Yesterday's piece of data on the 49ers quarterback room was that Purdy and Mac Jones rank 1-2 in the NFL in passer rating on out-breaking routes. So much for the stereotype that Brock Purdy can't throw outside the numbers. He ranks number 1 in the NFL on out-breaking routes. Mac Jones was number 2. Then, other teams would die just to have a quarterback in the top 10. The 49ers have 2 at the very top of the league. But look at this. Yards left on the field by quarterbacks. You're going to have miss rate, which is on the y-axis. Misses are defined as uncatchable passes when the target was open. And then you have missed yards on the x-axis. So whenever a quarterback misses a pass, how many yards does he leave on the table? You want to be further down and further to the left here. You want fewer misses, and you don't want to leave yards on the table. Well, for the San Francisco 49ers, Brock Purdy and Mac Jones are the two very best quarterbacks in the entire league. They have the lowest miss rate. Both of them, I mean, they're side by side. This is extraordinary. Both under 4% missed rate. They have not left yards on the table. Meanwhile, we got quarterbacks like Matthew Stafford, Caleb Williams, Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes, Cam Ward, Bo Nix, who have left hundreds, if not over 1,000 yards on the table. Bo Nix has left 1,100 yards on the table through missed passes this year. Brock Purdy and Mac Jones have both left less than 200 yards on the table through missed passes this year. So when you're talking about execution and accuracy from the quarterback position, the 49ers are getting it from not just one QB, but both of them. And, you know, they've needed both of their quarterbacks to deliver because Brock was out for 8 weeks. So to get to this point where they're fighting for the number 1 seed, where they have a chance to grab that number 1 seed at home in the final weekend of the regular season, the 49ers have absolutely needed these exemplary efforts, this precision from both of their quarterbacks. And I don't know if there's been a quarterback room ever in the history of the NFL to perform at this level. I know that the 49ers had Steve Young and Joe Montana at the same time, but Steve Young wasn't a highly top-rated passer yet in 1988 when he played quite a few games. That's when he had the big run against the Vikings, the 49-yard run that helped the 49ers secure a playoff spot. I know that Young came in for a few games, but it was really just in mop-up duty in 1989 when Joe Montana had his best season. So it wasn't like he was playing half the year. This year, the 49ers have had Mac Jones play half the season, 8 games, with this kind of accuracy, all while Brock Purdy has played the other half of this season with similar accuracy, but Purdy has also added mobility and explosiveness on top of that. It is a phenomenal combination. The 49ers are in this position in huge part because of it, and I don't think that it should be taken for granted because, again, I don't think we've ever seen anything like this. Look at those 2 logos in the bottom left of this graph. Now, speaking of quarterback play, that's the big advantage that the 49ers have on Sunday or Saturday against the Seattle Seahawks. Take a look at this right here. This graph, you want to be further to the right and further up. This is the quarterback performance in the NFL ever since Brock Purdy has returned to the lineup in Week 11. He has been the most efficient quarterback in all of football. Upper right, he and Drake May are head and shoulders above the rest of the league. This is one big reason why Matthew Stafford should not be the MVP. Over the back half of the season, Stafford has actually been over here on the left side of the CPOE dividing line, the y-axis line. Stafford, he had a great start to this season, and it's trailed off to the point where it's been downright inaccurate at crucial moments. And the proof is in the pudding. You've seen the Rams lose 2 straight games. You've seen the efficiency charts really reflect the fact that he's not playing quarterback at as high of a level as somebody like Brock Purdy or Drake May. But for this game in particular on Saturday, we should focus on another NFC West quarterback who's taken a tumble, and that is Sam Darnold. Darnold was never in the same efficiency spot as Matthew Stafford earlier in this season, but he was at least above average. He was in the upper right quadrant of this graph where quarterbacks want to be. Since about week 10, things have trended in a downward direction for Sam Darnold. Week 11 happened to be when they played the Rams at SoFi, and Darnold threw 4 interceptions. He has not been the same quarterback since then. In fact, he's in the bottom left quadrant here. There's a massive gap between how Purdy has performed and how Darnold has performed. Purdy, in terms of expected points added, which is the efficiency stat that's going to encompass everything: touchdown passes, interceptions, completions, incompletions, yardage, down and distance adjusted. Purdy ranks number 1 since he returned in week 11. Sam Darnold, meanwhile, ranks number 23 since week 11 in this time span. So entering this game, the 49ers have a huge advantage at the quarterback position. The issue for San Francisco is that their quarterback plays one of the best defenses in football, while the Seattle quarterback, Sam Darnold, plays one of the worst defenses in football. The 49ers now rank, I think, number 24, number 25 defensively. So they're definitely in that bottom clump of defenses. And as we saw last week against the Chicago Bears, it wasn't pretty. So Purdy and Darnold don't go head-to-head in this game. They face the respective defenses of the Seahawks and the 49ers. But there still is a big gap in the performance of both quarterbacks. And typically in massive games like the one that we're going to see on Saturday, the team with the better quarterback has a sizable advantage because the quarterback is going to be the player with the biggest impact on game flow, on possession, on making sure to take care of the football, which is something Darnold has struggled to do in these big games. Even the big game that Sam Darnold won against the Rams a couple weeks ago, he threw 2 picks that were really bad. And as I said yesterday, the Seahawks probably lose that game if not for a punt return touchdown from Rashid Shaheed. They're down 30-14 well into the fourth quarter. They needed the special teams boost to get themselves up out of the damage of the Sam Darnold interceptions. So Darnold has a lot to prove, not just because of his struggles in big games, but because of his struggles over the back half of this season in general. And the 49ers do have a major, major advantage at the QB position. We can go through some other numbers. This game, the stakes, by the way, for the 49ers and the Rams, obviously the Seahawks, if they win, they're the 1. If they lose, the Seahawks will be the 5. But for the 49ers, it's win a number 1 seed by week. If they lose, San Francisco will likely drop to the 6th seed. The 6th seed will very likely play at Philadelphia. If it's not the 49ers as the 6, it'll probably be the Rams as the 6. So the 49ers are playing for a couple things. They're playing for their 1 seed and an avoidance of the 6 and an avoidance of a trip to Philadelphia, all while also playing for the Rams to have to probably go to Philly. And there could be no better outcome for not just the 49ers, but the rest of the NFC for a team like the Rams, who have obviously been strong on both offense and defense. There could be no better outcome than to force them to go play a slog in Philadelphia. Take a look at this. This is the rate of snapping the ball late in the play clock. The Philadelphia Eagles stand alone. They are trying to bleed as much clock as possible at all times. I mean, you have all these teams clustered in the middle. The 49ers actually snap the ball quickly. The 49ers run a fast-paced offense. The Eagles over here, these guys are trying to shorten the game. They're trying to bleed as much clock as possible at all times. They're trying to shorten the game to make it an ultra-low possession afternoon or evening. And then they're just trying to play really good defense and muddy things with their run game. A lot of it probably deals with the lack of trust that they may have in Jalen Hurts, but the Eagles play in a different style than anyone else. And if they're hosting a game in the postseason, it's going to be very likely in cold weather. It might be in inclement conditions, and it could really be something that gives any team that has a high-powered offense, especially through the air, more trouble than usual, just because of stylistic purposes. The Rams lost in Philadelphia last postseason. The Rams don't play well in cold weather. The 49ers want the Rams to have to go through this, to go through Philadelphia in the first round of the playoffs, as much as the 49ers would like to avoid having to go through that. So that's just one of the stakes for the 49ers and the Seahawks coming up here on Sunday. And there are other permutations, of course, that could change things. I'm just telling you the two most likely ones. 49ers win, Rams go to Philly. 49ers lose, 49ers go to Philly. However, if the Detroit Lions beat the Chicago Bears, which I don't think is likely, but it's possible. That game is at Soldier Field. And if the Washington Commanders beat the Philadelphia Eagles, or if the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Washington Commanders, because the Eagles are at the 3 right now, but the Eagles will not be playing some of their starters. That was just announced a little bit ago. But if that happens and the Eagles move up a spot to the number 2 seed, the Bears will drop into the 3, and that would mean that the 49ers could travel to Chicago if they lose this game against the Seahawks, or by extension, the Rams could travel to Chicago if the 49ers beat Seattle. So the 2-3 seeds are still not determined in stone, but it's likely that Chicago will remain at the 2 and that Philadelphia will remain at the 3, especially since we just learned that the Eagles will be resting some starters, including Jalen Hurts, when they play the Commanders this weekend. When you want to talk about the football gods, and maybe they are on the 49ers side this season after all, this might be the one piece of data that best supports your case. Last year, the 49ers saw their opponents miss only 1 field goal. I know that the 49ers had massive kicking issues on their end last year, but their opponents in 2024 missed only 1, which was tremendously bad luck for the 49ers. They therefore ranked all the way down, dead last, number 32 in expected points added from opponents' field goal misses. The 49ers have gone from the very worst in the league, number 32 in this statistic, which is largely, almost completely out of their control, to number 1 in 2025. And, to add a chef's kiss to all of this, look who now ranks number 32, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have had the worst opponent's field goal luck of any team in the NFL. Now, the 49ers have gained 26 expected points from opponent field goal misses. That's a lot of expected points. That is well over a point a game just because their opponents are missing field goals. And that, in a league of very, very tight margins, that could play a difference in wins and losses, and probably has for the 49ers already this season. Anyway, just some food for thought, because as the 49ers have surged their way to one of the top 2 spots in special teams ahead of the special teams bowl against the Seattle Seahawks, who are also in one of those top 2 spots, it's also worth remembering that the 49ers have had some good fortune in that phase of the game, and sometimes it is better to be lucky than it is to be good. Crazy stat. I couldn't believe it once I saw that. We're going to do a little 49ers roster check-in right now, because I know that I went through the 49ers roster news with John Lynch when we started this show. So here's a look at the 49ers depth chart. I still have George Kittle in injury shading, but I think that we can take him off now. We saw George running around at practice yesterday. They're practicing under the lights, and they're essentially only walking through this week. The 49ers aren't doing much physically. It's a short week getting ready for Saturday. George was moving fine. George was in good health. It is going to be George Kittle starting this game for the 49ers on Saturday. Just like John Lynch, I'd be absolutely shocked if that was not the case. Now, Jake Tonjes, if you're Kyle Shanahan and you want to throw one more schematic wrinkle at opponents, and if you've been saving something for playoff time, you might as well start using it now. Maybe it's a perfect time to use it now with Kittle coming off an injury and Jake Tonjes coming off of a perfect game. Not a perfect game. He did drop a pass, but a really, really good game. 2 tight end sets, like 2 receiving tight end sets. I know the 49ers have run Farrell and Kittle on the field at the same time, or maybe even a 3 tight end set. That's something that the Rams have actually run to some success this season, especially against the 49ers back in week 10 in a game where they hung 42 points on San Francisco. So I wonder, do the 49ers unleash another wrinkle to this offense, especially against the really good defense like Seattle's? Remember, week 1 saw Kittle score a touchdown on the very first drive. That was the first score for the 49ers all season. Then Kittle exited with the hamstring injury. And then it was Jake Tonjes who played hero, especially on the final drive with 3 catches, including the game-winning touchdown. Obviously, there is some vulnerability to the tight end position in this really good Seahawks defense. Maybe there's going to be vulnerability to multiple tight ends in this Seahawks defense. So with Kittle on track to be available and Tonjes coming off that really good game, I do wonder what the 49ers have in store regarding their tight end plan on Saturday. Then there's Trent Williams. Obviously, we can't take him off of the injury shading. He may not even practice this week. It may be all rehab for Trent Williams as he tries to angle to play on Saturday. But the 49ers do like the fact that Austin Pleasance behind him played so well for them against the Chicago Bears. On defense, we're going to keep an eye on Keion White today. Groin strain for the 49ers edge rusher. Keion, good player, had some important pressure, especially working against the inside. Game-changing pressure, I thought. Before the half against Chicago, 49ers needed a stop against Caleb Williams and the Bears, and it was Keion White who lined up on the inside, beat the guard, and broke through the line and flushed Caleb Williams out of the pocket. I'm not so sure that the 49ers win that game without that particular pressure on that play. Keion, though, dealing with a groin injury. He did not practice yesterday, but I would expect him to give it a go either today or tomorrow. We'll see. If he's not out there today, Keion White, that's one of the players where you're not sure if he's going to be available for the 49ers on Sunday. He doesn't fall into the Trent Williams, George Kittle classification, but they can use all the bodies that they have on this roster, especially given the defensive struggles as of late. I will also say that the Seahawks have actually been running the ball better in the last couple of games, especially the last game against Carolina that Zach Charbonnet went for over 100 yards. I could talk all I want about Sam Darnold struggling, and that has been the case. But if the Seahawks can get some sort of run game going, that can mask some of those struggles because they really are that good of a team defensively. Like they just need something to lean on offensively. It just can't be scorched earth. Kind of like how the 49ers just need something defensively and they'll be okay. Seahawks, other direction, right? It's the flip of that. The Seahawks just need something offensively, whether it be the run game or just some short pass efficiency, turnover avoidance from Sam Darnold, and that sets their defense up for success. It's a great defense for Seattle against the great offense for San Francisco. It's going to be a hell of a matchup on Saturday. 49ers linebacker position, who I have some intel for you. I don't think anybody's reported this yet. Drum roll. Guess who was in the locker room during media availability yesterday? Fred Warner. Guess who hasn't been in the locker room over the course of the past 2+ months during media availability? Fred Warner was back. Well, that's Fred Warner. He hadn't been in the locker room. But Fred Warner was back in that locker room during media availability yesterday. And what that tells us is that his rehab schedule is morphing, is evolving into a schedule that is more compatible with the daily schedule of healthy players. If a guy's just rehabbing 6 hours a day, he's not going to be in there while the media's in there. He's going to be on the rehab table or in the pool doing whatever he's doing. Fred is actually doing a lot of swimming. I talked with him about that before the game on the field on Sunday. The San Jose State swim coach is working with Fred Warner, which is why he's been able to start moving as fast in the water as he's moving. But he'd been doing all kinds of rehab stuff, 6 hours a day, with the clear intention of returning to the field this season for the 49ers. And it is very, very apparent that Fred is making progress and significant progress in that direction. So just a little nugget for those of you who watch this channel that you did not get anywhere else. I would encourage you to subscribe. We did cross the 97,000 subscriber threshold. We're at 97,082 now as we charge forward toward 100,000 real subscribers. So Fred Warner back in the locker room. You heard that here. And if you're happy about that, go ahead and hit the subscribe button right now. Other piece of solid 49ers injury news is that Upton Stout was back at practice yesterday for the 49ers. He remains in the concussion protocol, but he has progressed quickly enough through the protocol to be back out at the first practice on a short week, which suggests that he should be available for the 49ers on Saturday. The opposite end of the spectrum there as far as concussion protocol and progression, Nick Martin. Remember when he suffered a concussion against Cleveland on November 30th, a month ago? Martin never got back to practice, remained in that protocol up until the 49ers put him on injured reserve. That was a couple weeks ago now at this point. So Martin was not showing the progress that the 49ers wanted him to show, or the concussion protocol needed him to show, and the 49ers had to shut him down. It's been, so far, the opposite trajectory for Upton Stout, who already was back at practice in a limited capacity yesterday and might be able to be out on that football field. It was so interesting being in that San Francisco locker room, talked to several players, and, I think that based on what I've gathered, that final play was a God's grace kind of play for the 49ers. I don't think they were only supposed to rush two. I really don't. I know that Kyle Shanahan said that there was some kind of variation of the play call. I'm not buying it. I really am not. I think there was some kind of miscommunication on the play, and the 49ers ended up dropping both Bethune and Winters and both Okawanu and Yetur Gross-Matos. So, zone blitz means that you drop the two defensive linemen and you bring two linebackers instead. Instead, they just went full zone coverage. They only rushed the edge rushers. They only came with Farrell and with Bryce Huff. Everyone else dropped back in the coverage, and that'd be an issue if Chicago had surprised them with a run. If everybody was dropping, obviously the Bears didn't run. They decided to throw. It ended up, and in most situations, it'd also be an issue even if Chicago was passing, because you don't get any pressure on the quarterback. And no matter how many guys you have back in coverage, if the quarterback can just stand there forever, you're probably going to lose the rep. But it ended up working in the 49ers' favor. Again, I say by God's grace. Those were Chase Lucas's words. For a number of reasons. A, dropping 9 into coverage sealed off a lot of throwing lanes for Caleb Williams. B, I think that rushing only 2, it was a weird dynamic with Bryce Huff against the left tackle, who might have been expecting some help but didn't get it because the interior guys were expecting inside pressure. It just seems like the Bears were out of sorts with their protection package. And Bryce Huff won his one-on-one. So the 49ers won a initial pass rush, despite only rushing 2, which is crazy. And because there was only one-on-one blocking, there was nobody to help, even though the Bears had the resources to help. They just had offensive linemen standing around. So Huff got around the edge, forced Caleb Williams to flush the pocket, and then Caleb Williams had to face a defense that had many passing lanes covered. Now, Chase Lucas told me that he did not get DeAndre Swift coming out of the backfield, and he thought in real time that was a mistake. He just lost DeAndre Swift. So he's like, oh, God, they're going to throw to the running back, and this is going to be over. But before he had enough time to fully panic in his head, he saw Colston Loveland running along the back line, the tight end, the same direction as Caleb Williams was rolling. So Chase Lucas just improvised and said, I'm going to get into the throwing lane. And he told me that he got in front of Colston Loveland and he literally made eye contact, like stuff slowed down like this was a movie, he made eye contact with Caleb Williams. Because Williams was rolling left, and this is when Yetur Gross-Matos had decided to go on his 27-yard sprint to close out on Caleb Williams. But, of course, he had a little bit of time before Yetur got there. And Caleb was ready to throw, and then he locked eyes with Chase Lucas. And then he hitched. He obviously didn't let go of the pass. Yetur closed in a couple more steps, and at that point, Caleb had to throw, and he threw the ball, skipped into the ground, incomplete, and the 49ers won. If Lucas did not break his assignment on the play accidentally, and if he did not recover to take on a different non-scripted assignment, getting in front of Colston Loveland and into Caleb Williams' throwing lane, and if he did not make eye contact with Caleb Williams, who decided not to throw the ball into the back of the end zone, if that didn't happen, the 49ers probably give up a touchdown here, and they probably lose the game. And we are not nearly as excited talking about this game on Saturday because the 49ers would be playing for nothing really here on Saturday. They would just have to be packing it up and getting ready to travel to Philadelphia on Wild Card Weekend. Instead, this week means a whole heck of a lot. The NFC West can be won on Saturday. The NFC's number 1 seed can be earned on Saturday, and it was all due to a razor-thin margin on Sunday against the Chicago Bears. Unbelievable. I am hopping into the comment section right now to answer a couple questions. I haven't been in the comment section here in a while, so I don't see a lot of questions. I'm going to go to the super chats first, give you guys a few minutes to answer them. Sign Justin Simmons or Trevon Diggs? Definitely not Diggs. The 49ers aren't really weak at corner. Safety has been a little bit more the issue. If they did anything, if they brought in any veteran in a desperation move off the street, I think it would be at the safety spot. But the 49ers, I mean, Trevon Diggs racked up a lot of pick sixes for the Cowboys when Micah Parsons was rushing because he was cheating on dig routes, aptly named cornerback Trevon Diggs. Deommodore Lenoir is playing good football. Renardo Green, he's going to be back this week, it looks like. He's also playing good football. I think at nickel, the 49ers are obviously weaker, but Trevon Diggs would not help San Francisco there. I don't think that he has a lot of gas left in the tank. It's been mainly damage against safety and linebacker for the 49ers. Brock Purdy's actually played some good games in the rain. His best game in the rain from an efficiency standpoint, and it was off the charts, was against the Seattle Seahawks in the playoffs in the 2022 season. His very first playoff game was against Seattle 2022, and Brock Purdy, that was in the rain at Levi Stadium, and he absolutely lit Seattle up. Listen, every single quarterback to ever play the game on the aggregate has had lower efficiency numbers when there's precipitation. If the football is wet, it's harder to throw. It's harder to do a lot of stuff offensively. Of course, it's going to hurt offensive performance, like on the aggregate. So to act like Brock Purdy is the only quarterback who's had some struggles in wet conditions is completely disingenuous. You have to look at the actual performance range that he's had in wet conditions, and he's played some really, really good football in wet weather as well. So the way I look at potential rain on Saturday is the Seahawks might be hurt more by potential rain on Saturday. Why is that? Well, because the biggest gap in this game, matchup-wise, is between the Seahawks offense and the 49ers defense. You know, on one side, you have the 49ers number 1 offense against the Seahawks number 1 defense. There's not a big gap there. Like, every yard will have to be earned. That is a titanic battle. It's 2 elite units. The other matchup in this game is the Seahawks offense, which I get it hasn't been great. I showed you the stats of Sam Darnold's slide, but they've been better than the 49ers defense. I don't think there's any question about that. The 49ers defense, that there's some really big red flags on that side of the ball. The best way to neutralize that disadvantage that the 49ers are entering with, at least on paper, might be wet weather. Like the wet weather might slow down Seattle's offense enough to give the 49ers defense, which has really been struggling, some sort of better footing. Just the way that I see it in this game. Either way, both teams have to play through this weather. And I don't see this being a massive advantage for one team or the other. In fact, the general rule of thumb is that the underdog typically benefits from adverse weather conditions because the favorite is the better team on paper. And right now the spread is close to even. The Seahawks are 1.5-point favorites. So if anything, the wet weather may be something that hurts Seattle a little bit more. Crazy stat, though, is that the Seahawks have won 13 of their past 14 road games. So you do have to give them some credit for being able to handle adverse conditions away from home. Thank you for this question right here. I know it's covering my face right now, but it's a strength of schedule question. The 49ers' strength of schedule was deemed easy early on, right? Because of the last place schedule last year. Updated, the 49ers by DVOA, if you measure their opponents analytically, have had the fourth most difficult schedule in football. So the strength of schedule argument should definitely go out the window. The 49ers have played some very tough games, and they still have found their way to 12-4. Do I think that Upton Stout will be good to go? Yes, thank you for this super chat as well. I do think that Upton Stout will be good to go because he is progressing through that concussion protocol, and he did practice yesterday. Use my charts on Facebook to prove how outstanding Brock is. Awesome. That's good. I mean, the numbers don't lie. The production doesn't lie. This should be a meritocracy. This is a meritocracy, and that's how we objectively evaluate things. All right, there's your update. Lynch said that George Kittle almost certainly is going to play on Saturday. There even does seem to be a chance that Trent Williams plays, which is, I think, in the big picture, good news for the 49ers. But remember that Austin Pleasance has been excellent for the 49ers behind George Kittle, so do not discount him. Speaking of John Lynch, we're going to end this at 47 minutes. Red 47, John Lynch. We'll talk to you soon.